Good morning, everybody, and apologies for the late start. I've been having some technical issues trying to link Zoom and Facebook. So this is why we have a slightly alternative format of me doing a live straight into the group. So I'm hoping this is working. So today we are looking at how many hours you work, which doesn't necessarily sound like the most fun, fascinating topic, but it's so important to really recognize everything that you do. And this has come up in lots of different ways over the years, talking to teachers and practitioners. And often when I speak to people, and very often, it's working mums, and there might just be a little tendency to underplay actually how much work we're doing, because it's often juggling lots of different things. And so many people that I've spoken to and say, oh, are you a full-time teacher? And they say, oh, no, I'm just doing, 3 or 4 classes a week. And, and then I've got maybe another part-time job or looking after children. It's just it's a small thing that I do because potentially in their mind, and maybe in yours as well, which is why we're here, you might think if you're teaching 2 classes a week, that's just like a side hustle. You might just be thinking you're only doing, say, 3 hours work a week because you're doing 2, say, hour and a half classes, plus a little bit of setup and close down time. And so you're thinking those are your working hours because that's when you're delivering your teaching. But what we're going to look at today is actually how much work we are doing as professional yoga teachers. And it doesn't matter whether you're doing 1 class a week or 15 classes a week. We're still professionals. This isn't just a little hobby that we dip in and out of or dabble with. So whatever hours you are doing, you're still a trained, qualified, insured, professional yoga teacher. And I think we just really need to acknowledge that. And it's also really important if we want to develop our practice and make it sustainable and have it give us an income. We can't do that without really acknowledging and planning for all the hours that we work and not just our teaching hours, because we need our income to cover all the hours we work, not just the hours that we're teaching. And I've noticed in the past, probably more with clients and with students, that because we do sometimes get a little bit of pushback around our pricing, and certainly for my one-to-ones, and when people have kind of said, oh, £80 an hour, I'd like that kind of rate. And it's like, but that's not my hourly rate for my work. That sort of £80 for a one-to-one has to contribute towards the pot that covers my whole working week. I work full time, probably more than 40 hours a week if you add everything up. So all those other hours that I'm working, I don't want to be working for nothing. And so that hourly rate, when you spread it over all the hours we do, you start to realize that actually we're not overcharging at all, because we do have to cover all the other things that we do. And this is what businesses do as a whole. If you've got a large company selling a product, then the sales of that product have to pay for the manufacturing, the packaging, the delivery, the shops, the staff, all the marketing, like that has to cover it. And so we need to do the same in our own practice as well, that we are acknowledging how much work we're doing and paying ourselves for all the work that we do. So I was putting together a little bit of a brainstorm of some other things that we do that is not necessarily teaching, but are really important. And what I'm going through today is by no means exhaustive, and it will vary depending on how you work, what your specialities are, any other things that are going on. But I thought it would be useful because sometimes we don't always realize some of the things that we do actually count as work. Because ideally, we're in this field because we love yoga and we love teaching. And so some of the work that we do, hopefully, doesn't feel like work. And just because it doesn't feel like work doesn't mean it's not. In a way, isn't that what we're aiming for, is to have a career that we love so much that it's fun, easy, enjoyable to do, and it doesn't feel like we're working. And just because we're having a nice time doesn't mean that we shouldn't get paid. You know, I think sometimes we kind of have this old idea that work, like if you're working, then it's kind of serious and it's hard, and it's like, oh, I'm working so hard and therefore I deserve to be paid. When it's in flow and we're having a great time and we're loving it, maybe there's that little bit of guilt coming in. It's like, God, really, I get paid for doing this, but I'm having a good time. But when we think of other professions that perhaps people really enjoy, like I was watching an interview with a comedian this week, and he was saying how much he loves his work and what a privilege it is to get paid doing something that he loves. And of course, behind the scenes, there is a lot of work that goes on to get good and to build a career. But fundamentally, that part of being on stage and delivering or spending your days writing jokes, what a great way to earn a living. So we are allowed to enjoy what we do. It doesn't all have to be hard for us to be paid for it. So some of the things, if we start maybe with the more obvious work that we do outside of actually teaching in the studio, first of all, you have to count your travel time. In another job, if particularly, say, if you're teaching a class and a one-to-one in the same day and you're traveling between, that travel time needs to count as your work time. Because if you're moving around during the day, if you think of if you were employing someone else, and actually this comes up as a workers' rights thing for carers who go from home to home and their travel time not being included in their working day, and they're saying that that's unfair not to get paid because they can't be doing anything else to earn money because they're traveling from one job to another. So we need to include our travel. We need to include our correspondence. So how much time are you spending, say, with inquiries about your classes, or phone calls, emails, students getting in touch to clarify something? You might have a new student who's interested, who you want to have a conversation with, or they might have some questions about location and is there parking and what are the different deals, and all of those questions that come in, that's all work. So any kind of managing your bookings, dealing with inquiries, dealing with taking payment, processing payment, queries about, oh, did my payment come through? How many lessons have I got left on my block? All of that stuff, that's all work. Then there's, if you've got new students, there's the time in reading their intake form, checking if there's anything you need to be mindful of that might lead you into looking up, say, a health condition that they've mentioned or medication that they're on, finding out what the side effects are. I do this a lot in cancer because I don't know all the drugs. But if I have somebody new and they've listed medication, I might do a quick look up to see what the main side effects are, so I'm aware if their meds might cause dizziness or, you know, might cause nausea or might cause brain fog or any of those things. It's just nice to know. And then there's our lesson planning and preparation. So there's the time that you might be putting together a plan for a specific lesson. There might just be ongoing reading and researching around, you know, refreshing your memory about maybe practices or postures that you haven't taught in a while. So there's all of that lesson prep and planning. Then there might be aftercare of students as well. So if you have somebody new, or maybe something happened in class and you might want to follow up, check somebody's okay. You might be making home practice plans for people. You might be doing handouts in your class. You know, there might be all kinds of aftercare. You might do follow-up emails from classes. You know, all of those things is part of your work. And then with the class itself, there's the setup and pack down time. And you might, particularly if you have your own space, there's all the stuff around the yoga equipment. So maybe time spent cleaning your studio space, cleaning your mats, sorting out the space itself. Do you sometimes need to decorate it? Are you maybe needing a new storage unit? Do you need to replace some of the equipment? So that's not just a cost for your expenses, but it's a cost in your time. Because if you're not doing it and it needs to be done for your business, then you'll end up paying somebody else. So, you know, all of those things, we need to be making a record of how much time we're spending doing that. So that's just around classes and students. Then, of course, we have marketing. So we all need to do some form of marketing to help build the numbers in our classes to get new one-to-one students. So again, thinking about or making a record of how much time are you spending on social media? Now, this can mushroom easily because we can so easily get distracted by other people's posts and, you know, interesting reels. And, you know, it happens to me all the time, but I also try to have some scheduled time to schedule my media. So all the time that we spend making material for social media, posting it, writing captions, all of that work time. You know, if you're posting things on Facebook, again, you count that as your work time. Maybe you also have a Facebook group and you've got time managing that, creating content, managing inquiries and membership. You need to count that time as well. That's all work. And hopefully there's some other marketing going on as well. So you might be sending newsletters out to your students. You might be writing blogs. You might be writing articles for other people's websites, for magazines, for other organizations. You may be making videos. You might have your own YouTube channel. Like all of this stuff, these are all your working hours. And we don't want to be doing all of this for free. And we wouldn't expect someone else to do that for us for free. I think that's often a good guideline around whether you count something as your working hours is, if you ask someone else to do it, would it likely be something that people would expect to be paid for? Are there jobs out there that are doing the thing that you need doing? And so that's often an indication. If other people have a career being paid for doing these sorts of things, then we should be getting paid for them. And there's a whole separate issue about whether you get to a point where you do need to outsource because you can't do all the things and pay someone else to do it for you and free up more time. That is a really important area, but a separate thing from today. And this process of actually auditing how much time you're spending on all of these things will highlight for you actually what your working hours are, and maybe where you're losing a lot of time and it might be better to outsource. But you can't really know that until you do this first stage of really acknowledging how much time you spend on all these things. And it will give you the information to work out, as we spoke before, about, can you streamline things to be more efficient? Can you cut some stuff out? Can you outsource some things? But we need, first of all, to get all the info of how much work we're actually doing. So that's all the marketing type of stuff. And then there's other business things. So we need to be doing our bookkeeping in our accounts. We need to do some financial planning. We need to do some overall business planning. And that takes time. We need to sit and, have some space to really look at all our different areas and feel into our vision and all of those things about where are we now, where do we want to be. All that kind of business planning takes time, and that also is part of work. Large companies do this all the time. They'll do it as a group and they'll have a meeting, and everyone in that meeting is being paid for their time. This still counts. So those kind of things. Then there's also just general office admin. We'll all have lots of emails that come in, and there'll be things about renewing your membership, recording your CPD, renewing your insurance. You might be spending some time looking into maybe better deals. If you've got a subscription for some software, is that still the best thing? Again, these things take time. Looking at a good deal for your Wi-Fi, all of that. You might be shopping around for a better insurance company. There's all of that kind of thing. You might also, depending on how you're developing your business and what services you want to offer, you might be needing to learn about some new technology or some new software. And again, you might need to shop around for the best solution for what you want to offer. So for me, when I was looking at where am I going to store all my video content, there are several companies out there. It took me some time to compare and contrast the features. Does it do what I want? What kind of deals do they have? What's the functionality? Is it a monthly or an annual thing? How do the prices stack up? All of that stuff, that takes time. And again, that's part of our job. And these are the things that our students don't realize that we do behind the scenes, but these are things that need to count as part of our working week. So all of that kind of general correspondence, and digital admin as well. Ideally, we want to be backing up important things, maybe clearing off some space off our laptop on our phone as it gets full. You know, just general, like I have laptop maintenance. I do a scan once a month just to, you know, make sure everything's working properly. And again, spend some time looking at, well, what kind of software do I want for my laptop to help with the maintenance and help with internet security and all of those things. Um, there may be some legal stuff that we need to deal with. There's all of that kind of stuff. So again, we need to be counting the time that we spend doing that. And then there are other business development type things. So networking is a really important part of our business, and it crosses over into marketing as well, but it also crosses over into building our own support networks as well. So, you know, building working friendships with other teachers, other practitioners in your area, other businesses that you can cross refer to each other. You might belong to a business networking group. So you might have a weekly meeting that you go to or a fortnightly meeting. You may have a business mentor. Again, all of these things are working hours. I think also attending yoga classes for ourselves and our self-practice, that counts as well. And again, this might be something that we really enjoy. So, you know, meeting up for a coffee with another teacher to talk about teaching, you know, that kind of peer support, maybe bouncing ideas off each other, that counts as work. It's pleasurable work, but it still counts. And same for going to someone else's yoga class or going on a retreat or attending a yoga nidra. You know, all of those things is part of our professional development. It's part of what we need to be doing as teachers. I would count that as part of your working week. And then, of course, there's your annual CPD, additional training, your first aid, all of those sorts of things. So you can see that there are a lot of different areas in which we are working, that it's all part and parcel of being a yoga teacher. So some of these things may not apply so much if you're quite new and you're being employed by a studio or a gym, for example. You might not be doing all of these things, but even if that's the case, get in the habit of acknowledging your working hours. Try to keep track of how much time you're spending on things, because then we come to looking at our pricing. And very often with pricing, we can get caught in comparing against other classes in our area about what we think people are going to be okay with wanting to maybe not appear, you know, too greedy or inaccessible. But the reality is, for a sustainable business to not get burnt out, we do need to be paid for all of our time. So if you look at, let's say, for example, because I know it's true of a lot of people, that you may have a part-time job that is, say, 2 days a week working for someone else. You're paid for that time. And then if you add up all your hours that you're doing as a yoga teacher, plus your teaching, so it's your teaching hours, your travel, your marketing, your admin, all of those things, then you need to work out what's the equivalent in terms of a working week. And I wouldn't be surprised if it does add up to the other 2 or 3 days of a working week. And so if you're looking at, you know, if the yoga side of your business is taking 2 or 3 full-time days equivalent, then you want to think about, well, what is a reasonable income for doing 3 days work a week, what would your target income be for that amount of time? So not thinking so much about the price of your class initially, but if you're working 2 or 3 days a week, full-time equivalent, what should your income be? And then you want to look at how do you get your pricing to reflect that. And obviously it depends on what your needs are, where you are in the country, but this is then how you start to build a picture of how you need to manage your time and what you need to be charging. And some of the most successful people I know don't teach loads of classes. What they've done is find a niche, work a lot on the marketing, and have say maybe 2 or 3 classes a week, but each class is very well attended and pays for itself. And I was listening to a talk that another teacher gave, I think it was last week, where she has built her business now that she has one class that she's charging £15 a class, which was certainly in the south of England and around the sort of London area, is very much going rate, and she has around 30 people who attend. So you're looking at that is like £450 for one class. And there we're really getting into the realms of a sustainable business. And I know that's not necessarily going to work for everyone, and certainly not immediately. But if we're in that sort of mindset of charge a decent rate and see, what your capacity is, and have your teaching hours be very well paid so that it covers a lot of your time that you spend on the marketing. And then it sort of becomes a self-feeding positive cycle that if you earn a lot in a class, then you feel less inclined to be doing 5 classes a day at 20 quid a time in a gym. That you then free up the time that you can build your business, do the marketing, start creating maybe some videos for a library for some passive income where you can earn money when you're not directly teaching. Like, there's lots of other ways that we can work. And it's also why I really recommend that everybody offer one-to-one classes as well, because they're often a good bit of guaranteed income. If someone's booked that hour, you're going to be paid a decent rate for that hour, because you've agreed a price with them, rather than classes, especially at the beginning, attendance might not be amazing, you might not be making a lot of profit to begin with. But we want to have our business model set up so that we can have this sustainable business. So it may be that it's really worth keeping your part-time job and just focusing on, say, 2 classes and some one-to-ones, and really focus on those classes until they're really busy. And then that becomes a more reliable income, that if you're wanting to move full-time, that you build up this one class, and then maybe you can start a second one and build that one up. And when you feel that that income is more reliable, then it's easier to let go of your other part-time work or to gradually reduce the hours. If you're thinking of your hourly rate as just being your teaching hours, you're not going to be able to grow your business, because you're not paying yourself for all the other work that you do. And so effectively, your hourly rate is probably below minimum wage when you add it all up. And there's not going to be the space to do the things that you need to do to enable your business to grow and develop, because all your time and space is just going to be running from class to class and teaching back to back every day. And there's no breathing room there. It's a path to burnout. And it's really going to impact eventually your quality of teaching, your health. It'll impact your students, it'll impact your joy in your job. And so we want to give ourselves space where we can be creative, where we can have the time to browse through our yoga books and look for inspiration and think about what you might want to plan for the upcoming term, and that not everything is just rush, 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 got to quickly do this, got to do that, and all those other jobs piling up in the background, so that, you know, the amount of times in January, the amount of posts that I see of people pulling their hair out because they haven't done any bookkeeping or financial admin for a year, and doing all their accounts in the last 2 weeks before the end of January. So for example, so my financial year ends at the end of March, and my plan is hopefully by the end of April, but definitely by the end of May, I will have that all done and dusted, sent to my accountant and filed. Because I don't like the stress at the end, and because I want to know all my numbers so I can plan for this year and see, are there things that I can tweak and improve. So these things all feed into each other. So yeah, as a summary of today, just really give yourself credit for how much work you do, how much is involved in delivering a professional class. You are undoubtedly putting in way more hours than you think, and you absolutely deserve to get paid for that. And saying just because we enjoy what we do doesn't mean that we should get paid any less. And just because we can fit in bits of admin in other time, like yesterday, Mondays is ballet for my daughter. I have 45 minutes in the waiting room while she's there. So I get a little chunk of admin done, but that's still work. It still counts. And those sorts of things, just because we can do it in that setting doesn't mean that we're not actually working. We don't have to be in some big tower block in an office to say, oh, I'm officially working now. So do recognize all the things that you do. I would encourage you, maybe starting from next Monday, for 1 week, try and have a little notepad with you and note all the jobs that you do and the time it takes you, and get an idea of a whole week, how much work you're actually doing. And then think about whether it's possible to set aside more focused time. So I'm much more in the habit of that now. So Monday is my admin day, and Wednesday is my admin stroke meeting day, because there are meetings that I have. And it's good to have those windows. So I got contacted by somebody who's visiting the UK, who's interested in me training some of their yoga teachers for their organization. So I couldn't have that meeting if I was teaching back to back 5 days a week. Like, we need some space to allow for that development and allow other opportunities to come in. So yeah, really be clear about, or start to get clear about, how much time you're spending, and maybe when it is that you're doing that, and is it possible to carve out a few hours back to back. You know, maybe there's a chunk of time one day when the kids are in school. Could you do, say, 10 till 2 solid admin, get lots of those jobs done? And this is what I've started doing over, you know, the last year or so, is really scheduling oh, that day I'm writing newsletters, that day I'm writing a blog, that day I'm recording videos. I'm putting it in my diary as blocked out time so that I don't forget to do it. So I don't miss my deadlines. And so it's booked in as a work appointment, and then I don't get distracted by other things, and that I book other people around it as well. So it becomes a bit more sacred time. So all of those things can just help you get a little bit more on top of your business. So I hope that's been helpful. And there's a lot of things to think about. But just for 1 week, it's a little bit fiddly, but it's worth doing just for 1 week. Maybe choose a week that works for you, and really do an audit of all the jobs you do and how much work you're doing, and then think about whether your pricing is covering all those hours. So do you need to tweak your prices? Do you need to maybe drop a class that's not very profitable to focus on ones that are doing a bit better and have them earn more, so it covers the time so that you can do more marketing and build more? Maybe you just need to have one more one-to-one on a weekly basis, and that will tip the balance. So we need the information before we can make big decisions in planning our business, in our strategy, in our pricing, in organizing our time. So if any of this has resonated with you, I'd love you to put some comments in the comments below, and see if there were any aha moments. And I'm going to wish you a very productive and enjoyable rest of your week. And I'll be here next week, hopefully bang on 10 o'clock when I solve my technical issues. Okay, take care for now. Bye.